This is Yeah, We're Going There with Dr. Natalie, breaking the silence on pelvic health for women and men. Yeah, we're going there because knowledge drives better health. Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Natalie, and the reason I decided to do a podcast on this topic is that as a pelvic health physical therapist, I see women and men daily with pelvic floor dysfunction that often could have been prevented if they were taught what to do or not do at a younger age. Of course, not all pelvic floor problems are preventable, but I feel that a good number are exacerbated daily by things we've never been told can weaken those muscles. One habit is not more important than the other. What's important is consistently aiming to do the right thing. I mean, unless you have an actual problem that is affecting your day-to-day, who even thinks about their pelvic floor? Wouldn't it be nice to never have to think about it? A big misconception is that urinary incontinence and other pelvic floor problems are age-related. Yes, they are common, but they shouldn't be considered normal. No one should have to worry about going out in public and fear that they may leak or smell. What kind of quality of life is that? And yet, the statistics are astounding. To backtrack for a moment, pelvic floor dysfunction is an umbrella term that covers several distinct problems. They are urinary leakage, accidental bowel leakage, pelvic organ prolapse, and a biggie's chronic pelvic pain. The percentage of women with at least one pelvic floor dysfunction is 32%. And people think that only women suffer from pelvic floor dysfunction, but that's not the case. Estimates range from 7% to 18% of men will suffer from a pelvic floor dysfunction in their lifetime. And this number is crazy. 1 in 7 school-aged children will suffer from issues related to incontinence. Another popular but incorrect assumption is that women who've given birth are the only ones who suffer from pelvic floor dysfunction. But now that you know the statistics on men and children, you're aware that this is not the case. So, what are the causes and what can we do differently to change these statistical outcomes? We're going to get into the 10 habits to follow to protect your pelvic floor so that you don't become one of those statistics. So, habit number 1, watch how you manage downward pressure on your pelvic floor. The pelvic floor is made up of 3 layers of muscles that are not made to handle excessive downward force. In fact, too much downward force on these muscles can result in urinary incontinence, prolapse, and more. Do you ever notice how you pick up a heavy object, whether it's a heavy bag of groceries or heavy weights at the gym, or even a baby in a car seat? I'm going to demonstrate what people often do. They're going to go for the pickup and they're going to go, ugh. When you hear that noise, the air's not going out. They're blocking off that airflow. So where's the pressure going? It's going down. That downward pressure will weaken the pelvic floor muscles. This habit of holding your breath puts chronic downward pressure on your pelvic floor muscles, weakening them. What about people who struggle with constipation and they need to strain to empty their bowels? That too leads to pelvic floor issues. Believe it or not, constipation affects up to 30% of children and accounts for an estimated 3 to 5% of all those visits to the pediatrician. So if we could start teaching children the importance of pressure management at a younger age, maybe we could prevent them from having pelvic floor problems later in life. The key here is to remember to always exhale with effort. I always say, think E E. E for exhale, E for effort. Or another one that I like is blow as you go. My patients happen to like that one a lot, actually. So what I typically tell them to do is to inhale in preparation for whatever they're going to do that's challenging. So if they're lifting a heavy box, inhale as they're going in for the lift and blow out their mouth as they're doing the difficult or effortful movement. Okay, so that was habit number 1. Habit number 2, don't hover over a toilet seat. I know I've been guilty of this, but many people, or many women, I should say, who would typically sit down to pee in a public toilet are scared of germs. And what happens when you're not sitting on the toilet is, well, let me backtrack. Our pelvic floor muscles are governed by our brains, like most things in our bodies. When we walk around throughout the day, our brain knows that we don't want to leak or soil ourselves or dirty a chair that we're potentially sitting on. So the muscles stay contracted to hold everything in. When we sit on the toilet, the brain goes, a toilet. And the muscles relax and get out of the way so the bladder or bowels can do their thing and empty. What happens though, when we go to a public restroom and we're not sitting but hovering over the toilet seat, the brain says, okay, I see the toilet, but you're not sitting, and the muscles don't know what to do. They can't fully relax because you're not sitting. Therefore, in order to empty, you need to push. Remember? Pushing is pressure that we talked about in number 1. And that can weaken pelvic floor muscles, especially if you really do it all the time. So, what I typically tell my patients is that if it's a porta potty, you have my blessing. Hold your breath, get in, get out. But anywhere else, try and create a nest of paper and actually sit down. Okay, number 3. Don't pee just in case. What do I mean by that? That means when you're leaving your house, when you're going to work or going to the gym or going for a walk, or you're leaving your work after a full day and going home and you go, let me go to the bathroom just in case I don't make it. Well, that's a bad habit. And what's important to understand is why it's a bad habit. And if you understand what happens to make it a bad habit, you'll be more inclined not to do it. So, how does the bladder work? The bladder is a different type of muscle than, let's say, our bicep muscle. Our bicep muscle is made of skeletal muscle, and we have volitional control over it. We could say, okay, we're going to go pick something up. Our bladder is made of smooth muscle, and we can't really control it, obviously. When it's got to go, you got to go. So how does the bladder know when it's time to empty? There are stretch receptors in the lining of the bladder that when the bladder reaches a certain volume of filling, those stretch receptors get triggered. They, in turn, send a signal to the brain, telling the brain, hey, we're full, do something. And the brain will send a signal back to the bladder, making it contract to empty. Now, the problem with going to the bathroom just in case is that you're typically going out of fear and not a real urge. Fear, like I said before, that you may not find a bathroom or you may have to go in the middle of a long drive home in traffic. So because you don't really have an urge and it's out of fear, a lot less urine is coming out. So what you're in fact doing is now you're training that bladder that those stretch receptors need to get triggered at smaller and smaller volumes because very little is coming out. And the problem with that is that now the bladder will think, okay, look, only a little bit of pee came out, so this is when we have to go. and that will lead to urinary urgency, urinary frequency, even when there's really no urge. So for people who do have overactive bladder and have that gotta go, it's never too late to retrain your bladder. So if you can, stop going to the bathroom just in case. And that brings us to the next habit. Habit number 4, don't pee in the shower. Of course, not everyone does this, but for some, running water is a trigger and it makes you feel like you gotta go. I find more people do than don't pee in the shower. So let's think about what our muscles are doing again. When we're walking around, our muscles are engaged to hold everything in, right? When we sit on the toilet, the muscles relax to get out of the way. So knowing that, what position are you in typically when you are standing in the shower? I just said it, you're standing. So your muscles should be contracted. Peeing through contracted muscles creates pressure. But in addition to pressure, it also solidifies that trigger for many people. And the next thing you know, you'll be washing dishes or walking by a restroom, and you have to go again. So now that I told you not to pee just in case, I do want you to pee if this is an issue for you before getting in the shower to break that trigger. Eventually, once you no longer have an urge to pee in the shower, we're going back to do not pee just in case ever. Habit number 5, let's see, is drink plenty of fluid. Okay, I know everyone hears this all the time. And I'm sure many of you know that water is crucial for many bodily functions. But what I often see is that people don't drink enough fluid. And at times, they'll even withhold fluid. Why are they withholding fluid? Those people that are constantly running to the bathroom think that the more they drink, the more they'll be running to the bathroom. So they're terrified to drink. But actually, that logic is false. And I'm going to explain why. You see, urine is very acidic. And when people withhold fluids, urine will become more concentrated, more yellow. And because it's more acidic, it's going to irritate the lining of the bladder, which then is going to send signals to the brain telling the brain, do something, I'm uncomfortable. And then, of course, the brain will send a signal back to the bladder telling it to contract. Again, this can lead to or make urgency and frequency worse. But if people were to increase their fluid, they will dilute the urine, making it less acidic, less irritating to the bladder, and that will calm that urge and reduce urinary urgency and frequency. Now, a big question is how much fluid is enough? According to the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, to stay hydrated, adult females should aim for 11.5 cups of water a day, while men should aim for 15.5 cups of water daily. And children need somewhere between 5 to 11 cups, depending on their age. Increased intake is also going to be necessary. So I'm talking about more than what I just said, will be necessary during illness or excessive heat, high temperature, exercise, when you're perspiring a lot, because we lose water, of course, through our pores. So these are just baseline numbers to follow, and the goal is to try and get as close to them as you can. Nursing moms who are sharing their intake need to up the amount of fluid they drink as well. So interestingly, fresh fruit and vegetables and all non-alcoholic fluids count towards your total amount. They count for about 20% of a person's daily water intake. Some people prefer to measure their fluid intake in liters. So I've done the math for you. Women should aim to get 2.7 liters of fluid per day. Men, 3.6 liters of fluid per day. Children need a minimum of 1 liter. Now, of course, we got different numbers. In pelvic therapy, what we were always told was to instruct our patients to drink half their body weight in ounces. So if you weigh 160 pounds, you drink 80 ounces. Honestly, it's difficult to find a consensus on how much the right amount is. So I hope you find these guidelines helpful. Drinking an appropriate amount of fluid also helps with stool formation. That's huge. People who are chronically constipated need to ensure appropriate fluid intake so that their stool is more soft, so that they don't need to strain. Remember, habit number 1, straining with constipation is pressure management, so we don't want straining. So that's just another benefit of increasing your fluid intake, is so that your stool doesn't sit in the colon for too long and get dried out and then become harder to push out. Along those lines, habit number 6, fiber. A high fiber diet supports good health in many ways. Okay, some of these ways include lowering cholesterol, maintaining good blood sugar levels, managing weight, and like we said, improving bowel health. For our purposes, fiber helps reduce constipation and therefore the need to strain. So now we are well informed about how straining affects our pelvic floor muscles. So fiber goes a long way in terms of protecting our pelvic floor. But how much fiber and what kind of fiber? I'm not a nutritionist, so if you need to find support from a dietitian or a nutritionist, please go for it. I strongly encourage everyone to learn more about healthy eating by working with a dietitian or nutritionist. I could share general guidelines, but this is certainly not my area of expertise. The National Academy of Medicine gives the following daily fiber recommendations for adults: 21 grams for women older than 50, 25 grams for women age 50 or younger, 30 grams for men older than age 50, 38 grams for men age 50 or younger. Okay, so this is important. When you do increase fiber in your diet, make changes slowly. And maintaining good fluid intake is hugely important. As you increase fiber intake, if you don't maintain good fluid intake as well, you're creating a disaster. Or I could say it's a disaster waiting to happen. However you look at it, maintain good fluid intake, maintain good fiber intake. Okay, that being said, fiber may not be for everyone, especially those who suffer from certain conditions where increasing fiber intake would not be appropriate. So, anytime you make changes to your diet, please reach out to the appropriate healthcare professional who can guide you on what you need to do, because your health history is different from the person standing next to you. So don't assume that if it's appropriate for one person, it's going to be appropriate for you. You know, you wouldn't just take somebody's word for it to take medicine. Well, fiber is not medicine, but it can affect your whole system. So you want to do it correctly and carefully and slowly. Okay, we're going to progress. Habit number 7. Okay, This one is quite important. Never ignore an urge to poop. As you could probably tell, most, if not all, of these habits are somewhat interconnected. So why is it important not to regularly ignore the urge to poop? When you withhold the urge to poop on a regular basis, the stool sits in the colon for longer than needed, and more fluid or more water will get pulled out of the stool for use elsewhere in your body. And as I said before, the stool's going to get harder and get more difficult to expel, making you need to strain. And again, we know straining is bad for our pelvic floor muscles. If you do this regularly, when I say this, I'm talking about ignoring the urge to poop. The reflex that notifies you that it's time to poop gets dampened, leading to more constipation and more issues. So, often, ignoring the urge to pee is fine. It's actually how we retrain the bladder to be able to accept larger volume, and that way a person doesn't have to run to the bathroom constantly to pee. Now, remember, it's okay for urination. It's not okay for defecation. We don't ignore the urge to poop. You have an urge, you go. Okay, habit number 8. Okay, I wish I invented this. I think everyone should use a squatty potty. And some of you are wondering what a squatty potty is. All it really is just something like a step stool that you put under your feet when toileting. When you sit on the toilet, you want your knees higher than your hips. Then you rest your forearms on your thighs so your upper body's bent over. What this does is it puts your organs in a better position or alignment to empty. It also allows your pelvic floor muscles to relax, because some people who have tight pelvic floor muscles struggle to relax those muscles. So the goal of that position is to get the muscles to better relax, to reduce the need to strain. And I recommend it to everyone for both pee and poop. I think every home should have one. Every bathroom should have one. It's for men. It's for women. It's for kids. It's a great Christmas gift. Although more people than not do have them, and now they do come in much prettier forms. They used to be these plastic white things, and now they come in lucite and wood, and you could match the wood into your decor. So there's no reason not to get one. Habit number 9. Reduce the amount of bladder irritants you take in. Now, this habit may not be necessary for everyone, but for people who experience urinary urgency and frequency, which is the gotta go, ingesting anything acidic can worsen those symptoms. The most common bladder irritants include caffeine, such as coffee and black tea. People find that herbal tea is less irritating, so that may be an option. Other common bladder irritants are citrus, artificial sweetener, carbonated drinks, even sparkling water can be an irritant. So if this is a problem for you, I recommend switching to flat water. And the most irritating is often alcohol. So people who know me well know that I'm a devoted coffee addict. And if someone told me to stop drinking coffee, I just couldn't do it. So another option for those who struggle with urinary urgency and frequency and really can't give it all up, try and give up your least favorites. But then if you're going to have something that you know is a bladder irritant, like a cup of coffee, have 1 cup of coffee, have 1 cup of water. Sip from one, sip from the other. And that way, you're essentially diluting the bladder irritant while also upping your fluid intake of appropriate fluid. So just a little cheat, but I often recommend that to my patients. Finally, habit number 10. Learn how to perform breath work, specifically belly breathing. This is one of my favorite because it helps in so many ways. Another term for belly breathing that many people are familiar with is diaphragmatic breathing. It's often used in yoga. Singers, the second I mention it, they know what I'm talking about. So the benefits of belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing includes reducing tension and stress, literally throughout your body, okay? Promoting relaxation. It affects the vagus nerve. And for our purposes, it allows your pelvic floor muscles to better relax and lengthen. So it makes toileting easier. It could often help reduce pelvic pain. We use it as a tool. Actually, psychologists use it with their patients who have anxiety because it helps take their body from fight or flight to rest and digest. I tell my patients who have a tendency to strain, when toileting, use a squatty potty and do belly breathing. The way I teach it is I tell my patients to lie down, as it's easier to learn when you're lying down. Place one hand on your belly and one hand on your chest. Imagine that under the belly hand there is a balloon. As you inhale the air through your nose, the air will bypass the chest and fill the belly or fill the balloon. As you exhale the air out of your mouth, the belly will deflate. It should be effortless, relaxed, calm. There should be no pushing, and ideally, the chest hand should stay still. Eventually, when they have perfected it in a lying down position, I tell them to move on to sitting and then standing. It can be performed all day long. It's also one of my favorite tools when you're struggling to fall asleep because your mind is just going and going and going about your whole day. Try belly breathing. It will shock you how quickly you can fall back asleep. So, to recap, I'm going to just talk us through those 10 habits that I'd love for all of you to remember. Habit 1, watch how you manage downward pressure on your pelvic floor. Habit number 2, sit on public toilet seats. Don't hover. Habit number 3, don't pee just in case. If you have an urge, go. Habit number 4, don't pee in the shower. If it's an issue for you, and I told you not to pee just in case before, I want you to pee before getting in the shower until that is no longer an issue, and then we go back to the other habit where you never do it. Habit number 5, up your fluid intake. Habit number 6, increase your fiber. But remember, there's a little side note to that. If you don't know anything about health and diet, get the support of someone who does, a dietitian, a nutritionist, whomever, on guidance on what are the best kinds of fibers for you and whether it's appropriate for you even. Habit number 7, never ignore an urge to poop. Habit number 8, get a squatty potty in every room of your house, or a step stool, or yoga blocks, or a book, or a trash can, whatever. Just get something under your feet. Habit number 9, reduce those bladder irritants. Caffeine, artificial sweetener, carbonated drinks like soda, citrus, alcohol. Habit number 10, last and final, remember, not in any order, work on belly breathing. I promise you will thank me. Well, I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I'll see you soon. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to Yeah, We're Going There with Dr. Natalie. If this conversation helped you feel more informed or less alone, consider subscribing, leaving a review, or sharing the episode. Until next time, yeah, we're going there because knowledge drives better health.